Hello friends, and thank you very much for watching this video where we discuss where shouldn't you use Java 14 records with Spring applications. So in one of our previous video we discussed that you can use records with Spring, but you have to be very careful because you can use it only when it comes to dependency injection, but be very careful because Spring is not only dependency injection. So some of you observed already that you can't use it with anything that's related to aspects. So anything that requires Spring to subclass your class won't work because basically records are final. That's how they are defined. You know, records, one of the most important things you have to know syntactically about records is that it's final and it cannot itself extend another class. It can only implement interfaces. So you will be able to use records with dependency injection if you wish to with Spring with either interfaces or without interfaces, but you won't be able to use it with any feature related to aspects, and that's because they cannot be subclassed. So look what happens here in my application using Spring Boot and Java 14. And by the way, Java 14 is now also available on the Start Spring IO site. So if you wish to create your Spring Boot application using Spring Initializer, you will observe that you have a nice option here, replaced version 13 with version 14, which can now be used. And that's precisely what I've done here. And what I want to prove you with this application I have done already is that you can use, and you already know from the previous video, you can use records for dependency injection. And my application, the way it is now, well, you will be able to use it as long as you don't apply anything that needs to subclass one of your records. So in my case, I have a hello controller here that injects through constructor. You see it's a record, and it's also component being annotated with the REST controller directly. Inside you have a hello service, and the hello service is as well a record. It doesn't inject itself anything, is a component being annotated with a stereotype annotation service. And I have a simple method here, and if I keep it like this, then I can basically run the application and test the endpoint hello, and it will work nice and smoothly. In my application I have as well added the Spring Security dependency, and I have added the enable global method security annotation as well. But for the moment, as you observe, I don't use anywhere the pre or post authorize or filter annotation. So that's why for the moment Spring Security doesn't try to do any kind of subclassing. But you see it's working because I have my password in the console here, which means that my default implementation, default configuration of Spring Security works, and you can test that. I can simply call my hello endpoint from a postman using the default credentials for Spring Security, and I see that the endpoint can be called correctly. But look what happens basically if I go in the service and try to add, for example, pre-authorize annotations. So at the moment I try to do that, let's say I want to check on the authority of the user, doesn't even matter what I add here because I won't be able to run the application. So IntelliJ doesn't tell me anything, and it's probably because I use this early access and it's probably not yet smart enough, it's not grown enough to general available release. But when I will try to run the application, then the application will tell me that Spring will try to subclass this hello service, and being a record which is implicitly final, Spring won't be able to subclass it. And that happens not only with Spring Security but with absolutely anything related to aspect-oriented programming and the usage of aspects in Spring. So you see here it tells me very nicely here, I have an illegal argument, cannot subclass final class blah blah blah, and that's because this class is basically a record which makes it a final class. So that would be transactional. It would be basically anything you can think of where you add an annotation over a method and you that has to instruct Spring doing something for you. So in any case of that situation, which are a lot of such cases in Spring, well, you basically won't be able to use it with records. So you will still have to fall back to a normal, nicely non-final class. And of course, if you do that, so if I do that now and I run it after I have changed it to a class, then I should see it normally starts the application correctly. The normal class will be able to be subclassed. Spring will know and will be able to create a proxy that intercepts my calls and applies the logic depending on what the annotation and what the functionality is I'm referring to, in my case the pre-authorized annotation. So you see my application finally in this case started. So this is it. Yes, maybe things will change. Records are still in their first preview stage at the moment of recording this video in Java 14. We don't know what the future is. But for the moment this is how it stays. So I hope now you know not only where you can use the records, but also where you can't use records with Spring and the reason why. Thank you very much for watching.